He was only 4 years old when he vanished from a quiet lake in Tennessee. No witnesses, no screams, just a red toy boat drifting back to shore. And for 18 years, his name lived only on a missing child flyer, worn, faded, forgotten by the world. But one day, a man donated blood at a tech company in North Carolina, and that simple act triggered a chain of discoveries no one was prepared for. What if your whole life was built on a lie you didn't choose? But before we begin, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? The storm hadn't fully arrived yet, but the sky had already turned the color of old bruises. Above Asheville, North Carolina, clouds dragged themselves low across the Blue Ridge Mountains, casting long shadows over the town. A warm wind carried the sharp scent of pine and damp soil, wrapping itself around power lines and rattling the edges of faded American flags outside porches. Inside the glass-paneled lobby of Everfield Technologies, a sleek two-story startup building that once housed a tire warehouse, silence was broken only by the occasional metallic ping of the elevator and the hum of computers still running late into the evening. Most employees had already left. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting a sterile glow over potted ferns and motivational posters. Owen Granger stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the first raindrops scatter against the glass. He wore a dark hoodie with the sleeves pushed halfway up his forearms, revealing pale skin and faint freckles. His eyes, green, tired, observant, kept drifting beyond the building's parking lot, toward the distant outline of the forested hills. He looked like someone who had waited too long for something unnamed. Outside, in the parking lot, a red and white Bloodlink RV was still parked by the curb, its engine long since cooled. Its sliding door was closed, but the side panel still bore the words, "Give blood, find purpose." A cardboard sign propped against a cone read, "Today only." All donors entered into National Ancestry Health Study. That was what had caught Owen's attention earlier that morning, not the word donor. The word Ancestry. He hadn't planned to donate. He never had before. He hated needles and had fainted during a vaccination in high school. But something about the word felt sticky, personal, like a thread had been tugged, and it hurt a little to pull. He had walked into the RV quietly, sleeves rolled up, joking about passing out. The nurse, Carmen, mid-40s, glasses hanging from a pink cord, laughed gently and assured him it'd be over in minutes. She didn't ask for much. Name, date of birth, email, consent signature. Then she offered a secondary form, optional participation in a national genetic heritage study, funded in part by the state's health department and a biotech partner. "We're helping people find long-lost family," she had said, "sometimes even solving missing persons cases. Isn't that wild?" Owen had smiled politely. He signed without reading the fine print. Now, hours later, he regretted it, not because he was scared, but because something inside him wouldn't settle. As if his body knew something his mind hadn't yet figured out. A quiet dread had latched onto his ribcage, and no matter how deeply he inhaled, it wouldn't loosen. He pressed his forehead to the cool glass of the window and closed his eyes. The rain began to fall harder. A bus rolled past the street, its lights diffused by mist. Somewhere behind him, a printer kicked on by itself, ejecting a forgotten project timeline no one would collect. And then, out of nowhere, a memory, brief, dull-edged, but real. A blue room, spinning stars, a voice humming a lullaby. His eyes snapped open. He hadn't thought of that room in years, maybe decades. He didn't even know if it was real. He told himself it was a dream, an image stitched together from something he once saw in a movie. Downstairs, in the dim hallway by the company break room, an old vending machine blinked erratically. A maintenance light flickered above the recycling bins, giving off a soft, ticking buzz. Owen walked toward the exit, but halfway through the lobby, he stopped. A small table sat near the door, still cluttered with leftover pamphlets from the blood drive. He glanced down. A flyer, partially soaked by rain blowing through the open door earlier, was curled at the edges. In bold blue text, "Help reunite families. All DNA data cross-checked with missing persons registries nationwide." A chill moved down his spine. He hadn't really processed that part. He thought it was just about diseases, heritage, ethnicity maps, and charts. Not that. Not missing people. And why did that bother him? He didn't feel lost. He didn't feel taken. He had a mother, Claire. She raised him alone. They moved around a lot. She always said his father died young. A car crash before he was born. There were no baby photos, just some school pictures starting at age 6. Claire had said they lost everything in a house fire. He had believed that for 22 years. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof. Lightning flashed briefly, illuminating the lobby with pale light, and in that moment, Owen noticed something. His reflection in the glass wasn't just his own. Behind him, blurred by the distortion of light and rain, was a shadow. Someone standing near the hallway entrance, still watching. He turned around instantly. No one. The hallway was empty. He stood there for a moment, every hair on his arms upright, heart thudding a little faster than it should. He was alone. He had stayed late before. This wasn't new. But something felt off. He walked out the door. Outside, the air was colder than expected. The mountains were barely visible now, swallowed by low clouds and mist. He pulled his hoodie tighter, walked past the Bloodlink van, and crossed the parking lot. Just as he reached his car, his phone buzzed. Unknown number subject, genetic match notification. Timestamp, 8:54 p.m. He frowned. He unlocked the screen. Just a single sentence. A close biological relative has been identified. Authorities have been notified. He read it twice, then again. The rain hit harder. The screen blurred. And the last thing Owen heard before dropping the phone was the sound of his own breath, catching in his throat. Owen Granger hated Sundays. Not because they were boring or slow or filled with the creeping dread of Monday morning. No. He hated Sundays because they felt unreal. Everything was too quiet, too clean, too curated. His neighborhood in Asheville was full of young professionals with solar panels, compost bins, and matching labradoodles. The lawns were sharp-edged. Every porch had the same live, laugh, love sign in some form. It was a life of symmetrical design, but for Owen, it all felt slightly off, as if he were walking through someone else's dream, never quite waking up in his own. He lived in a rental above a small bookstore downtown. The building creaked when the wind blew, and the pipes knocked late at night. But it was home. Quiet, cluttered, and filled with things he didn't buy but couldn't throw away. The apartment smelled of black coffee, old books, and wood polish. Vinyl records lined one wall, most of them thrifted. The only photo in a frame sat on his kitchen shelf, Claire, smiling by a lake, holding a younger Owen, maybe 8 years old. Her arms around him were stiff, but her smile was wide. You couldn't tell from the photo, but he remembered that day. She had cried in the car on the way home. He was always good at noticing what people didn't say. Owen wasn't close to many people. He had colleagues, yes, people he respected, traded ideas with, occasionally grabbed drinks with, but no one he truly let in. His closest connection was with Carly, his cousin, by adoption. She lived across town, taught art at a local elementary school, and had a laugh that sounded like a glass shattering in sunlight. Carly had always been curious about everything, and she had questions about Owen that she never fully voiced. "Do you ever think your mom's stories are a little too perfect?" she once asked during a 4th of July barbecue 2 years ago. He had shrugged. "She's just trying to protect me," he replied. "Or protect something," Carly muttered. He never asked what she meant, but he remembered it. Claire Granger was not a cruel woman. She was structured, polite, meticulous, a former legal assistant who carried herself with the calm discipline of someone who had survived a chaotic past. She didn't like surprises, didn't like questions. Growing up, Owen learned quickly which topics were off-limits. His childhood before age 6, gone in a fire, no photos, no keepsakes. His father, dead in a car accident. No details, no grave. Holidays were muted, birthdays modest, and bedtime stories non-existent. But she was there. Every cold, every fever, every scraped knee. She made his favorite grilled cheese with sourdough and cheddar. She sat through every school play, even when he played a tree. He loved her, still does. But now, he's afraid of her memory, because it doesn't make sense. The email from the Ancestry database had shaken him, but he hadn't told anyone, not even Carly. He didn't know how to explain the feeling of being cracked open without knowing what was inside. He opened his laptop, typed childhood photo albums into Amazon, scrolled past dozens. None of them felt like something he recognized. Because he had nothing to compare them to, at 1:37 a.m., he Googled, what happens when DNA matches a missing person? Then, can someone be raised without knowing they were kidnapped? And finally, how do you know if your life is real? He slammed the laptop shut. The next morning, Claire called. "Owen, honey, can you stop by the house later? I need help moving some boxes in the garage." She sounded calm, soft, but something in her voice trembled on the last word, garage. He agreed. Claire lived in a pale blue bungalow on the west side of town, where the streets curved around dogwood trees and houses still had birdhouses out front. The wind chimes by her porch played a metallic lullaby when he arrived. She opened the door with a nervous smile. "You look pale," she said. "Didn't sleep well." "Nightmares?" "Something like that." She didn't push. She never did. The garage smelled like dust and mothballs. Boxes were stacked against one wall, labeled in her tidy handwriting, X Mass, Kitchen, Files. But one box was different. It wasn't labeled. It wasn't taped. It was old, too old. The cardboard was yellowing, the corners dented, one side crushed inward. She avoided it. He didn't. "What's in this one?" he asked casually. "Oh, just old junk. From my aunt, I think. Nothing important." He crouched down, ran his finger along the top. It wasn't dusty. It had been moved recently. Inside, he found a child's sneaker, blue, Velcro, worn down on the right side. His stomach dropped. "Whose was this?" he asked, his voice too quiet. Claire hesitated, too long. Then, "Must have belonged to one of the kids I used to babysit. I don't know." But she did know, and now so did he. That night, Owen sat on the floor of his apartment, the shoe beside him, the photo of Claire in his hand. He stared at it for a long time, and then he flipped it over. Written faintly in pen, July 2009, Blue Lake, N, not O-N. For the first time in his life, he realized Owen might not be his real name. The first thing Owen noticed the next day was the quiet. Not the peaceful kind, more like the hollow kind, like a movie set after everyone goes home. Like a memory that used to hum with sound, but now plays on mute. His apartment felt unfamiliar. The walls seemed closer, the furniture sharper. Every corner held an edge he hadn't noticed before. The sneaker still sat on the counter. He hadn't touched it since the night before. It didn't belong to him. That much he knew. He picked it up carefully, as if it might disintegrate. The sole was peeling slightly, revealing a layer of old dirt wedged into the ridges. He turned it over, and for the first time saw something carved faintly into the rubber with what looked like the tip of a pen. N.P. He froze. That wasn't a child's doodle. It was an initialing habit. The kind parents teach kids when they're afraid of losing their shoes at camp. That same morning, he got a call from Carly. "I had the weirdest dream about you," she said. He tried to sound casual. "Yeah? You were a little kid in this blue room, and there were these stars on the ceiling, the glow-in-the-dark kind. You kept saying you lost something, but you couldn't say what." Owen's breath caught. He hadn't told anyone about the memory of the blue room. "I used to have those stars," she added. He hesitated. "Did I?" "I don't know. Maybe. You were already 6 when we met, remember? But Claire always said you were quiet as a baby." He didn't remember being a baby. Not even blurry flashes. Just a blank fog until around 6. He spent the rest of the morning digging through closets. He wasn't sure what he was looking for. Maybe proof that he existed before the fire Claire always mentioned. But he didn't find birth certificates. No hospital bracelets, no baby clothes, no photos before 1st grade. He sat on the floor, heart-thudding, as the reality settled in. There was no physical proof of his life before age 6. That night, he dreamed of water, a lake, shallow, murky, and someone's hand gripping his wrist, pulling him forward. When he woke up, his left wrist ached. It was just a dream. He kept telling himself that. But when he looked in the mirror, he noticed something he hadn't seen in years. A faint scar, small, white like a burn, right where the hand had pulled him. The next day, Owen skipped work. He drove to Claire's house again. She wasn't home. The key still worked. He walked slowly, letting the smells guide him, lemon cleaner, lavender, and the faintest trace of cigarette smoke from decades ago. In her office, he found the drawer she always kept locked. This time, it was open. Inside, papers, old bills, envelopes, but tucked at the very back. A faded yellow folder. The label was missing. Inside, a photo of a boy around 5 years old. Same green eyes, same scar above the eyebrow. A copy of a missing child poster from Tennessee. Name, Nathaniel Pierce. Disappeared, July 2006. Age, 4 hair, light brown eyes, green. He dropped the folder. It didn't fall like paper. It hit like a truth. Nathaniel. N.P. The initials in the shoe. He wasn't imagining things. He was Nathaniel Pierce. He took the photo with him, went straight to the downtown police station. He didn't know what to say. So he didn't try to make sense of it. He walked up to the front desk and said, "I think I might be a missing person." Detective Ray Mendoza had seen a lot of strange things in his 33 years on the force. But this wasn't just strange. It was personal. He remembered the Pierce case. He had only been a few years into his career, working backup on missing persons, but that case had stuck with him. It was the kind of case that never lets go. The kind where the parents age 10 years in 6 months. The kind where birthday candles keep being lit even after hope has gone out. Mendoza watched Owen closely as he explained. He asked questions carefully, trying not to influence the answers. "When did you first feel like something didn't add up? Do you remember anything before age 6? Did your mom ever mention Tennessee?" Owen answered honestly. Then Mendoza pulled out his own copy of the missing child report from 2006. The resemblance was undeniable. Over the next week, Mendoza submitted a formal request to reopen the Pierce case. He contacted the National Missing Persons Database to cross-check DNA records. Owen submitted a new saliva sample, and then they waited. During that time, Owen returned to Claire's. This time, he confronted her. He expected denial. What he didn't expect was silence. Tears welled in her eyes, and then she whispered, "I didn't take you, Owen. I just kept you." He stared at her. "What does that mean?" She trembled. "He brought you to me, a man. Said your mother had died, that you had no one. I believed him." "Who was he?" "I don't know. He called himself Robert, but that wasn't his real name." You'd never tried to find out who I really was." "I was afraid," she whispered. "I couldn't lose you." That night, Mendoza called. The DNA results were in. Match confirmed. Owen Granger was legally and biologically Nathaniel James Pierce. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was a fracture. Nothing in his world looked the same anymore. And yet the one question louder than the rest, who brought him to Claire and why? The drive to Nashville took 6 hours. Owen didn't speak for most of it. Detective Mendoza had arranged everything. The reunion would be private, unannounced to the press. The Pierces had asked for no cameras, no statements, just their son, or what might be left of him. Owen gripped the photo in his jacket pocket the entire drive, the old image from the missing child flyer. The boy staring back at him looked familiar, but disconnected, like a memory that wasn't his but lived somewhere beneath the surface of his skin. He didn't know how to prepare. He wasn't sure if he should smile or cry or apologize. Could you apologize for forgetting your own life? The Pierce home was a modest brick house on a quiet street, a swing set in the backyard. A dog barking faintly from next door, the smell of cut grass and honeysuckle. When they opened the door, Owen's heart nearly stopped. Eleanor Pierce looked older than her photos, grayer, thinner, but her eyes were exactly like his. Thomas, her husband, stood slightly behind her, arms tense at his sides. No one spoke. Then Eleanor stepped forward. Slowly. She didn't reach for him. She just looked at him and whispered, "Nate?" Owen swallowed. "I think so." She broke. Tears, sudden and deep. She didn't wail. She didn't scream. She just pressed her forehead to his chest and let herself be quiet for the first time in 18 years. They spent hours sitting at the kitchen table. Eleanor brought out photos, drawings, birthday cards. "You used to say you wanted to be a paleontologist," she said, laughing through her tears. "You hated milk but loved pickles," Thomas added. "There was a turtle you called Uncle Steve. You used to dance in the hallway when you thought no one was looking." Owen didn't remember any of it, but each story planted something small in him, roots of a life buried, not erased. Then they showed him the last photo ever taken. July 2006, Lake Chelan State Park. Nate, 4 years old, in swim trunks, holding a red toy boat. Eleanor's voice cracked. "You were gone 20 minutes. Your dad went to refill the cooler. I looked away to grab the sunscreen." The toy boat washed ashore half an hour later. Nathaniel did not. Owen walked the shoreline the next day. The lake was calm, deceptively peaceful. Children played nearby, splashing and laughing. Parents hovered like sentries. He stood at the water's edge, eyes fixed on the surface, trying to feel something, anything, and then a scent. Sunscreen. Banana-scented. Faint. Sharp. It hit him like a hammer. A flash. A towel with turtles. Someone yelling his name. Then arms. Lifting. Running. The memory vanished as fast as it came. Detective Mendoza had gone through the old case files. Nothing new had come up, no witnesses, no strange vehicles, no obvious suspects. But Owen had a question no one had asked before. How did Robert, whoever he was, know to find me? Claire had said he showed up with a story, but that wasn't random. That was targeted. Someone knew where Nathaniel had disappeared to. Mendoza pulled strings. He tracked down Lori Benton, a ranger working at Lake Chelan, in 2006. She had filed one of the original reports and still lived nearby. They met at a coffee shop by the highway. She remembered the day clearly. "It was a madhouse," she said. "So many people. I remember the Pierces. I remember the panic." Then she hesitated. "There was one guy I flagged at the time, but they ruled him out." "Who?" Mendoza asked. "Solo camper, mid-30s, gave his name as Robert Keller, but nothing stuck. He said he saw a boy running into the woods and thought nothing of it." Mendoza blinked. "Robert Keller?" Owen leaned forward. That's the name Claire gave me. Lori nodded slowly. He was strange, calm, too calm. Kept notes. Had a disposable camera. Did you find him later? No. He left before the investigation really began. Mendoza went digging, but there were no records of a Robert Keller matching that description. No fingerprints, no driver's license, nothing solid. Then, through a forensic archives request, Mendoza found something unexpected. One of Robert's old camping registration slips had a second name attached, scribbled faintly in a corner. Emergency contact, C. Granger, Claire. She knew him. She hadn't just been a passive recipient of a child, she was part of it. Owen confronted her that evening. Her hands trembled as she opened the door. He didn't speak. He just showed her the slip. She looked at it for a long time. Then she said, "I never wanted it to be like this." Claire Granger didn't speak for a long time. She stood in the doorway of her house, pale, shoulders drawn inward, her eyes fluttering between guilt and fear. As Owen held out the camping slip with her name on it, she didn't even try to deny it. "Come inside," she said quietly. The living room hadn't changed in years. Same beige couch. Same clock with the tick that echoed just a little too loudly. Same crocheted blanket folded over the armrest. Claire sat down slowly, her fingers clasped tightly together in her lap. "I was 28, she said, staring at nothing. Working nights, barely making rent. I was lost. I didn't have anyone." Owen stood, arms crossed, unsure whether to listen or yell. "And Robert?" he asked. She closed her eyes. "I met him at a grief group. We weren't supposed to talk outside the meetings, but he stayed after one night. Said he'd lost a sister. Said he understood the ache." She shook her head. "He was strange. Kind, but cold. Like someone who had memorized what emotions looked like but didn't feel them." Their relationship had lasted 6 months. It was never romantic. Claire insisted that part, but it was intense. Robert spoke often about how the world was broken, how some children were meant to be saved from parents who didn't deserve them. He talked about starting over, building a life that was better, without pain. Owen's throat tightened. "Did he tell you about me?" Claire nodded slowly. "He said he knew a boy, that he'd seen how the parents treated him, that the mother was careless, that she didn't watch him, that the boy had almost drowned once, and no one noticed." She looked up, her voice trembling. "I believed him." She said she never expected what came next. One night, Robert showed up at her door, holding a child. "You need to keep him safe," he said. "He doesn't belong where he came from." Claire said she panicked. She didn't ask questions. She didn't go to the police. She didn't check the news. She just took the child. Took Nathaniel. "I thought maybe it was true," she whispered, "that you were abandoned, that you were unwanted. You were so quiet, so scared. You never asked to go home. You never even said another name." Owen's heart ached. "Because I was 4, he said. I didn't know how to ask." She covered her mouth. Tears began to fall. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was lonely. And I thought maybe this was my second chance. Maybe I could do something right." Owen didn't scream. He didn't break anything. He just stood there, staring, because he finally understood something. Claire didn't steal him out of cruelty. She stole him out of brokenness. And Robert was never saving anyone. Detective Mendoza ran a background search using facial recognition tools enhanced with old DMV records. The photo Owen had provided, along with Claire's original description, finally yielded a match. Robert Keller was an alias. His real name was Gregory Milton, a man with a sealed record in Seattle, formerly charged with child endangerment in 1997, but released after the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. He had disappeared from the system in 2003. But here was the twist no one saw coming. He was never a stranger to the Pierces. In 2006, Gregory Milton had been a social worker in training, doing field observations in Tennessee. He had met the Pierces during a community outreach event, and during that brief time he became obsessed with Eleanor Pierce. She had declined his help, politely, but it was enough. One day after the event, he showed up unannounced. Eleanor told him to leave. He did, but he never forgot her. When Nathaniel vanished, no one made the connection, because Gregory had used a different name, different city, and Eleanor never thought to mention him. But the dots were all there, once someone connected them. Mendoza brought the full file to Owen. He read every word, every timestamp, every lie. He learned that Gregory had been watching his family, that the lake trip wasn't random, that the disappearance had been planned. It shattered him, not just the loss of a name, not just the theft of a childhood, but the truth that someone had designed his life. When he returned to Claire's the next day, she was gone. A note on the counter. "I know you'll never forgive me, but I'll always love you. I just wanted you to be safe. C." No address, no phone number, just silence. He called Eleanor. "I need to know something," he said. "Did I seem like I was okay back then?" She hesitated. "You were gentle," she said, "but quieter than most kids, always watching." She paused. "Sometimes I wondered if someone had already broken your heart, even before you could name what a heart was." That night, Owen dreamed of the stars again, not in the sky, but on a ceiling, glowing, and a voice, Robert's, whispering, "You're mine now." He woke up gasping, hands shaking, and a new memory surfacing. A cabin, a drawer with locks, a camera with no film. The truth wasn't finished yet. The cabin was exactly where he remembered it, even if he didn't remember remembering it, until now. Hidden deep in a stretch of woods outside Chattanooga, the structure was nothing more than a decaying shell. Faded siding, boards warped by time, moss curling around the base like old fingers. Mendoza had tracked down the location through an old property rental under Gregory Milton's name, filed in 2005, then abandoned. It had never been searched. No one had thought to look. No one knew a child had lived here. Owen stepped over the threshold slowly. The wood groaned beneath his shoes. It smelled of damp rot, dust, and something metallic. A broken lantern sat in the corner, a rusted metal bed frame, an empty drawer with a broken lock, and in the far corner, beneath a loose floorboard that Owen pulled up with shaking hands, a box. Inside, a photo of a young Owen asleep, a notebook filled with Gregory's handwriting, a crayon drawing, a boy holding hands with a tall man beside a crooked house, and taped to the back of the drawing, a message, "You were my reset. My proof the world could be rewritten, but they wouldn't understand. No one ever does." Owen sat down slowly, legs weak beneath him. This place had been his beginning and his end. He stayed for hours, reading, sitting, letting the silence speak. There were no big answers. Gregory's notebook rambled. Ideology, bitterness, loneliness. He believed the world was dangerous, that some children needed to be liberated, that love could be recreated. But he never called himself evil. He called himself necessary. Owen felt sick. He closed the notebook and stared at the drawing. The boy looked happy, but the smile had too many teeth. The man had none. Later, Eleanor met him outside the cabin. She didn't cry this time. She just held his hand. "This is where it happened?" she asked softly. Owen nodded. "I don't remember it fully," he said, "but it feels like something that lived in my bones." She knelt down, touched the ground, whispered something too quiet to hear. He didn't ask. He let her grieve in her own way. That night they sat together on the back porch of the Pierce home. Thomas brought out hot tea. Carly called from Asheville. Claire still hadn't been found. Mendoza had issued a missing persons report, not to arrest her, but to make sure she was safe. No activity on her accounts. No one had seen her. She had vanished as quietly as she had entered the story. Owen both hated and missed her. He looked through more old photos that night. One in particular stuck out. It was a birthday party, his 5th. In the background, balloons, cake, other children. But on the table in front of him was the same red toy boat from the lake photo. He stared at it for a long time. The timeline didn't make sense. The toy had been recovered after his disappearance. It should have been left behind. Unless Gregory had taken it and kept it and gave it back to Owen later as if to rewrite the narrative. He flipped the photo. Written in faded marker, Nate's New Life, 2007. His throat tightened. He thought about burning it, but instead he put it in his pocket. Before returning to Asheville, Eleanor asked him one question. "Do you want to be called Nathaniel again?" He thought about it, about the name, the weight, the truth it held. Then he said, "I think I want to be someone who survived both." She nodded, eyes full of pride and pain. The next morning, Owen returned to Asheville. The bookstore below his apartment had put up a new window sign, "We are the stories we choose to remember." He smiled for the first time in weeks. He wasn't sure who he was fully, but he wasn't lost anymore. And somewhere, maybe far away, maybe closer than anyone thought, a woman named Claire Granger sat alone in a diner, sipping black coffee, watching a boy play with a toy boat in a puddle outside. She smiled, then disappeared again. Autumn came early that year. The leaves in Asheville had already begun their slow transformation, flickers of red, orange, and gold brushing the tips of trees like fire held still. The mornings grew colder, the coffee tasted warmer. Owen Granger, or Nathaniel Pierce, depending on the day, had found peace in small things. He still lived in the same apartment above the bookstore, still brewed his coffee the same way, still listened to the same jazz records at night. But something inside him had shifted. He no longer watched the world from the edges. He stepped into it now, even if he still carried the weight of 2 names and 2 histories. Every Tuesday he called Eleanor. Every other weekend she and Thomas drove up to Asheville, or he went to Nashville. They didn't try to rebuild what was lost. They simply built something new, slowly, honestly. No expectations, just presence. He never heard from Claire again, not officially, no credit cards, no phone calls, no sightings. But one morning a package arrived. No return address, no handwriting. Inside, a photo album, handmade, each page labeled with years, 2006, 2007, 2008. Photos of Owen growing up, moments frozen in time, smiles, birthdays, drawings taped to fridges, and at the very end, a letter. "I don't know if this redeems me. I don't expect it to. But you were loved, Owen, even in the wrong story. See." He cried for a long time, not just for what was lost, but for what could never be recovered. Later that night he visited the lake again, not the cabin, not the place of pain, just water. Still, reflective. He brought with him the red toy boat, the one Gregory had kept, the one that had started everything. He placed it on the surface, watched it drift slowly away, until the wind took it. He didn't chase it. Back in town, the bookstore owner invited him to speak at a community event. "Something about your story feels like it belongs to all of us," she said. He didn't want to talk about trauma, so he talked about memory. He told the audience, "Sometimes the past finds you, even when you weren't looking. And when it doesn't always bring answers, but it brings the chance to choose what to keep, what to carry, and what to finally let go." They applauded quietly. Some cried, some just nodded. A little girl came up to him afterward. She handed him a crayon drawing. It was him standing beside a tree, in the sky, stars. She said, You look like someone who remembers good things. Owen knelt, smiled. Sometimes, he said, you just have to find them again. That night, before bed, he looked out his window. The same view as always, same mountains, same lights. But now he saw something different, not the shadow of what was taken, but the silhouette of what remained. And maybe that was enough.